Set up the stream? Okay. We're live on all the stuff. Hello, and welcome to Question Block.
Hi!
This is Secret Loft's live historical educational comedy podcast. And this week, we're talking about the Roaring '20s. You know, the 20s, after the great pandemic ended.
Oh, yeah.
But 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're going to see today, there's a lot of parallels between the 2020s and the 1920s. Yeah, I'm Dr. Wires, no, I'm Wires of NYC. I go by many names. But one of the co-owners of Secret Loft, and with me, my co-host is...
Aerialist.
And you are a podcast connoisseur and historian.
Yeah.
And Aerialist.
I'm the smartest.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's kick it off. Let's talk about why are the 1920s called the Roaring '20s? Why are they so famous? Why do we still have theme parties about them today?
Well, the first thing you have to understand is that you're doing it all wrong. If you're having, that's what, there's so many angry, I love that there's so many angry, like, Zoomers on YouTube that are like, you're bad and wrong, and you aren't doing your Great Gatsby party correctly. That's, like, the main...
To be fair, that is every historical or tutorial YouTube channel for the most part. So it's not just
an angry Zoomer that doesn't... No.
That is really defensive about a time period.
That they... that they couldn't be farther from. So we're gonna do the same.
This is a fun counterpoint too to like last week's ancient Egypt episode, where like the incredible length of the history of ancient Egypt just stretched for like millennia, was not well documented or anything. Whereas the 1920s is like sort of mass media short. Is present. It's very short, a time period. Has a super large cultural impact, and probably because of the context being between the two world wars is remembered very fondly.
And also Egypt, it was very, like, a lot of the fashion and makeup is very inspired by Egypt.
Oh yeah, and the irony too, in the 1920s Egypt mania was a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, to set the context of 100 years ago, so it's 100 years ago, and we'll say you're in New York City, and the Great War has ended. That was in the 1910s. And so around the early 1900s, like, globalization kind of took off. They had like the telegraph, electric lighting became a thing. People were very excited about technology, and a lot of stuff we take for granted today was being invented and popularized. And then World War I happened, and the technology got used to kill a bunch of people, and it really sucked.
Wait, washing machines got used to kill people?
No, but the same technology that goes into a washing machine will power like an automatic like assault rifle. So
I gotta do some experimenting when we get home.
Not quite, but like a lot of like the chemical like warfare was based on like chemical research that got used for like good stuff, and for medicine also got used to like make like mustard gas.
Okay.
In World War I, for example. So not too many people talk fondly about like the 1910s because everybody was at war. Maybe like war historians do.
Also, there was a flu.
And then starting like towards the end of World War I, the influenza pandemic, which got known as the Spanish flu, not because of any fault of the Spaniards, but Spain.
Well, it was their fault, but
it wasn't.
I mean, they reported on it, so if they kept their damn mouth shut.
Yes, it was their fault. They got the rap, I guess. Not their fault that there was like a pandemic. But yes,
of course.
There was a major pandemic, in part related to the globalization we talked about. But then the Spanish were the only country. All the countries still engaged in World War I didn't want to report that like they had like hundreds of thousands of like sick or dying people
because they thought it would make them seem weak and make their penises seem small.
Or like the enemy might attack if it comes out that like all your men are like dying of influenza, they'll be like, oh, we should probably like go try to like invade tonight. I don't know. Right.
Let's invade tonight. Everyone's
sick.
coughing.
Everybody's sick. Yeah. So Spain was the only country that reported like
because
honestly
they were neutral.
about their numbers. Yeah.
They were neutral, and they were like, well, like, you guys, everyone here is dying, and people were like, it's their fault.
Yeah, the Americans and Germans were like, well, we don't know anything about this.
So yeah, it was, but fault. We talked about this in our first podcast ever on medicine, and like, I was gagged at how many people died from the Spanish flu. Like, y'all thought Corona was bad. The Spanish flu, like, wiped out such a huge chunk more of the population.
Yeah, if coronavirus is like, I don't know what the global numbers are now, but it amounts to like 0.1% of people that died, whereas like the influenza pandemic was in like 1919 was like a couple percent of people died. Yeah. Of the population.
Young sexy people too.
Yeah.
Not just the weak. Actually, not the weak.
Wasn't a statistic you could hide in the nursing homes. This was all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you could hide it in the trenches.
And so very famously, this came up a lot while coronavirus was spreading, is people were like, oh, like, when the like victory was declared for World War I, a bunch of cities wanted to have victory parades. And a couple cities, their health commissioners got them to cancel the parades, and other cities didn't. So like Chicago famously like went ahead with their parade. And like within 2 weeks, like hundreds of thousands of people were in the hospital.
Yeah.
And that's why you couldn't go outside last summer. Actually, you could. You just couldn't you couldn't go to raves or Victory Day parades. But
Victory parades.
All right, so that's all about why the 1910s sucked, and then basically everything started getting better in the early 20s, and then there was a decade of prosperity.
Yes. So what got better? Let's do it. It gets better.
It gets better. Well, yeah, certainly not a lot of stuff like, you know, the Jim Crow South or those kind of things. But
okay, Mr. Pessimist, I can tell you
specifically industry and farming start doing like really well, and it goes very well
because during the war farms were subsidized, and that like kept going. Also, women, because they had been nurses and whatnot in the war, that was like, I guess like their men learned how to sew and shit like that, and so like they still were kind of in the workforce, and there were washing machines and like toaster ovens, so they didn't take them as long to make their husband's breakfast or wash their husband's clothes.
Home chores got easier.
Also, like there were Margaret Sanger was like, she was like sewing condoms and stuff like that for people.
Okay.
So that was something that was cool, because now women could like delay having children, stay hot for longer. Just kidding, all you hot moms out there.
Widespread birth control.
Widespread birth control. Yeah. Also, the Great Migration, because like during the war, a lot of slaves, they got to like not be slaves anymore.
Yeah, because the industrial capacity that was needed in the North, where a lot of the factories were, they weren't slaves at that point. It's the 1920s. They were sharecroppers.
Yeah, which we all know.
Slavery and was very similar.
Like, we're just calling we're calling a slave a slave because that's what they. I mean, they're like, you can leave, but we'll kill you. Like, yeah, it was bad.
Well, yes, a lot of African Americans have been deliberately kept in poverty by their former plantation owners and forced to just buy food from the company store. Yeah. And there's like a bunch of insane stuff in the history of like the South in the 1900s based on this, how dysfunctional it was. But they got to go. But a lot of them left to go work because their workers needed in factories during World War I.
Exactly. During the war, they're the people that were enslaving them had to go fight or were in the factory. Let's hope that they all died. And so the former enslaved people got to come to New York and live in Harlem. And also jazz was coming around because people weren't into blues anymore because they were like too sad, but they still liked the music, like the instruments and stuff. So they were like, what if we like made this really unpredictable and like a little bit happier? And there were all these new dances, like I'm just like, I'm laughing because I'm imagining like, they're like, there's a new dance. The Charleston.
Yeah.
The shimmy, I think, was one of them.
You remember from our Wizard of Oz episode, right?
Oh,
which
yeah.
which came out during the 20s, the movie. That there originally was a dance scene in it. There was like a dance competition where they do the jitterbug.
Oh yeah, the jitterbug, the Lindy Hop, I think was
Yeah.
one of them. Yeah.
So, yeah, in part, I mean, a lot of this you could say this like, a lot of cool culture happens because formerly marginalized people, like women and African Americans, suddenly get economic power post
Yes.
World War
Oh,
I.
and people get like everybody does too, because I think what was it? There was like the pound like went down and the dollar went up, and the inflation was like the best it's ever been. I don't know what would be good for that. It was like 0. I don't know. Is that good?
Man, I don't know what inflation was in the 1920s.
Is it good if it was 0? Right?
It's not necessarily good or bad.
Okay.
It's a nuanced discussion.
Also, credit happened.
Economic indicators were pretty good, and credit was easy to get.
Yeah.
Because the economy was doing well, which we'll talk about later on, then like resulted in the crash of 1929.
Also, cars.
People driving cars around.
That really, like, it really changed everything because teenagers could, like, yeah, they didn't need, like, their horse person to, like, bring them places. Like, they could just have their independence. And so and education, too. So, like, public education, so, like, children weren't just hanging out with adults. They were, like, hanging out with their own peers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so basically this led to, like, a very cool culture. There's also the Prohibition that happened exactly in 1919.
Mm-hmm. So this is I suppose you'd call this, like, the downside or whatever, or, like,
Wow.
Prohibition was not roaring, but...
It led to roaring. Actually, so yeah, I have a bunch of, like, crazy, like, stories of I have a bunch of crazy Prohibition tales. I'm pulling up my notes.
Prohibition, the temperance movement, to, like, set the scene.
Wait, okay, I don't know what temperance means. I kept hearing
It means prohibition. It's, like, the term. It's called the temperance movement instead of the prohibition movement. But temperance was... What
does temperance
It has
mean, though?
religious connotations, too.
I only know it as, like, a name.
It's being, like, a tight ass. It's being, like...
Okay.
It's just that. It's
The tight ass movement? Can we just call it that?
It's like everybody needs to get up at 6 a.m. to go to church on Sunday movement. So it's has very, like, Christian kind of waspy / puritanical roots.
I know that, but I just didn't know what the word meant because I'm
temperance.
smart, but I'm...
Temperance is stuff related to that.
Okay, because I was like, does it mean the women's movement? Does it, like, I was confused. I kept hearing it, like, the temperance movement. Yeah, okay, but it just means being a tight ass. Okay, so there's this lady named, which I'm like, welcome to the stage. What a drag queen name. Her name was Carrie Nation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Coronation. Come on. That's like a fake name.
Yeah.
That's totally fake. Do you know what she did? She was wild. She was, like, insane.
Prohibition? What'd she do?
Yeah, she had a fucking hatchet, and she would, like, go around and just, like, hatchet saloons, and people... But she was, like, cute, like, old cute, and people were, like... They were like, please don't do that anymore. And she was like, okay.
And then hatcheting my saloon.
Yeah, and then she'd go to, like, another saloon and she would hatchet that up as well. And the Christians Women Association, they were like, can you not? Because people are like, they were like, we don't know her. Who is she? We've never met her. But yeah, she became somewhat of a sensation. And then there was the Anti-Saloon League. And there's this dude named Wheeler, and he was also fucking insane. I feel like him and Carrie Nation, they should, like, meet and, like, have a love affair. That would be so cute. But Wheeler basically...
Oh, because Wheeler's like a wheeler dealer.
Yeah.
I think that's where it came from.
Yeah, I mean, well, Wheeler, he went around associating alcohol with whatever, like he went to all the groups that there were. Like he would be like, okay, okay, like African American community, like stop drinking alcohol because it's haltering your like progress. And then he'd go to like the KKK, which was also having a roaring time, and he was like, stop drinking alcohol. It's supporting like Germans. It's supporting immigrants because they're the ones selling it, right? So he would go around, but what he did that was super effective in getting the Volstead Act, or like the Prohibition, really kicked off, is that if any politicians were for alcohol, he would basically ruin their career. Like he would sort of like lobby with the opposite like politicians. And so if you were a politician and it got out that you were like if you were a pro-alcoholist, then he would basically like he would just like filibuster. That I was like, what's the word? He would filibuster until you lost.
That's not what filibustering is.
What is filibustering?
Filibustering is speaking on the floor so that a vote can't be taken. It's just taking up time so that you can't move to a vote.
Okay.
If there isn't like a limit.
He
on
would like
speaking
filibuster the election by taking up other candidates and votes. I mean, he would also like attend all the elections, and he would just like stare you down and be like, I see you. I see what you're doing. You better not. Don't even think about it. Don't.
So to be clear, it doesn't all just pop up in like 1919. There had been temperance movements in America throughout the 1800s. And quick aside, there's a bar called the Raines Law Room in New York City.
Oh.
The Raines Law was passed in 1896, and it was pretty much a racist law. So it was because a lot of workmen it was a 6-day work week back then. And so like a lot of the Irish and German immigrants would work their 6 days, and then Sunday was their one day off, and they would go get drunk at like saloons. And the Raines Law basically said that only hotels could serve alcohol because the wealthy like mostly drank at hotels. They had nice ballrooms and bars and stuff.
Okay.
You couldn't get on like a party boat yet at the time, and Secret Loft hadn't opened yet. So they would go to like these fancy hotels, but so they passed a law that only hotels could serve alcohol, and to qualify as a hotel, you needed 10 rooms and you had to have food. And so
sounds familiar.
It's funny because even today, the New York State Liquor Authority enforces a rule that to have a full liquor license, your bar has to serve food, and it goes back, over 100 years. So the Raines Law, and it was totally just pushed by business owners because they were like, we're tired of these like Irish and Italian and like German laborers showing up hungover as fuck on Monday morning because they were out drinking. So we don't want them to drink as much, or they make them stay home with their wives so they won't get as drunk.
Wheeler, like he would sort of like promote that, like he would be like, look at them, but they probably weren't. They probably handle their alcohol.
But it's what you're saying exactly. So it became it was a shit show. If you think like the Lower East Side is messy now, probably 120 years ago, before they had widespread sewer systems or toilets, I bet it was awful. And ironically on a Sunday night too. But there's still also a state liquor authority rule that you can't be within 200 feet of a church and have a full liquor license.
All right. Okay.
Anyway,
no
this all dates to Prohibition.
Right now.
I'm just saying.
Okay. All right. No one cares in the 20s about.
No one cares in the 20s.
No one cares in the 20s.
Your anecdotes.
About your anecdote from the 20s.
Okay.
So,
continue. Sorry.
No, that was great. That was great. In 1917, like in World War I, really ramped up that anti-German sentiment, and most of the main breweries were run by Germans. So yeah, so like that really kicked everything into gear, and then there was a vote. I think in 1917 the Volstead Act was like kind of, it came up, and then in 1919 it goes into the Constitution. And yeah, I think on like New Year's going into 1920, because there was a year.
It did. It started on New Year's Eve.
Everyone had a big party where they bid alcohol. They had funerals for alcohol, which I guess his name was like Barley Bob or whatever. He was like Uncle Sam, but he was the like human personification of alcohol instead of America.
Anthropomorphic version of alcohol.
Yeah.
Sure.
So they buried him and like people
had
cried.
Caskets and
Yeah. And so the Volstead Act, it had a lot of loopholes. So actually drinking alcohol was not illegal. Making alcohol, like brewing alcohol was, you could have alcohol, like, so you could stockpile a bunch of it. So a lot of bars, they just like, they spent all of 1919 like stockpiling alcohol. And they actually, their alcohol lasted, the prohibition was 10 years, right? The alcohol that they stockpiled lasted them the whole time. Some of them.
That's insane.
Yeah,
That's
I
so
know.
much booze.
I know. Right? And like, you also, let me think.
Man, your beer won't keep that long. Whiskey. Yeah.
Canada and Mexico, and the Caribbean islands, you know, it didn't apply over there. So pirates were back on the scene.
And illegal importing. Yeah.
Yep, illegal importing. Also, you were allowed to make alcohol that was a certain percent. It was like basically kombucha.
Yeah, like 0.5%.
Yeah, so a lot of distilleries stayed open and they were like, oh, we're just making that. And then they were actually in secret making like the strong alcohol. Also,
but what you would do is you would bring your own like hard grain alcohol to a bar or at home, and at bars they were basically selling mixers.
Right, and that's where the word cocktail got invented. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, because it was like a secret word because like the word didn't exist, right? So you would be like, oh, I'd like a cocktail, and they'd give you like some cranberry juice.
Yeah.
And they'd go, what are you on, your period? And then you'd take out Everclear from your boot.
That's also where the phrase bathtub gin came from.
Well, they didn't call it bathtub gin back then.
They did not.
They called it synthetic alcohol.
Synthetic gin.
Or synthetic gin.
The synthetic gins taste like ass.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't gin that you at home, like people weren't distilling their own gin. Distilling was still mostly done in factories by commercial businesses. It was all super corrupt, but you would buy like the grain alcohol or whatever, and then, or this like super high proof gin, and then take it home and you would mix it with like various flavorings to make it tolerable.
Yes, and this is the interesting thing, why a lot of products that have alcohol in them have a lot of chemicals in them that are very poisonous, because the government was like, shit, people are...
That's not why today.
It actually is.
Really?
Yes, because it got into like the manufacturing like recipes or whatever, and they just like never took it out. So yeah, I mean, a lot of products that have alcohol, you know, ethanol, or like I don't know if they had isopropyl, like they had rubbing alcohol.
You can't drink that. Ethanol is the only alcohol that you as a human can consume.
So a lot of products that had ethanol in it, they just were like, there's ethanol in here, which like would make them dry quicker, like, you know, like a lotion or something. Cleaning products. But the government was like, oh crap, people might drink this, so as a deterrent, we'll put like poison in here as well, and people won't drink it. And people were like, we're still gonna drink it, and they were dying. And this is one of the things that the public was like, dude.
Yeah, the government was purposely tampering with, like, ethanol containing products, or mandating that you put poison in them.
People were dying, and they were like, I'd rather die drunk than live sober. Just like the song Rain on Me.
Or people thought maybe they just slapped like a label on it, but they wouldn't actually poison us.
They're like, let's find out.
So, yeah, I told you I used to work in a chemical lab, or not a chemical lab. I used to work in a
lab.
chemistry lab.
A chemical lab.
As a grad student, there were chemicals in the lab. It was not made of chemicals, but we had pure ethanol that we would use as a cleaning agent for like microchips. So you would spray it on your microchip with ethanol and then acetone, which was even faster drying, and then blow dry it. But the ethanol, they told us, they were like, do not drink the ethanol that's in the lab. Don't take it home. It's not a joke. It has benzene in it. It will kill you.
Yes. See? Yeah.
So, and we would always be like, why?
That's why.
And they were like, it's part of the extraction process to get it to 100 proof.
Not.
Maybe.
It didn't used to be. Yeah, they just never like took it out.
Yeah.
So the benzene industry would crash. They took it out.
Okay.
So that was like an interesting thing.
Well, what's cool is then the culture, the speakeasy culture that developed, led to a bunch of cool subcultures.
Wait, there was one more like thing. There was
Okay.
one oh yeah. So companies would also sell. It's a funny thing. I promise. So companies would sell. Well, first of all, the sales of like grapes went through the roof.
Oh, people fermenting their own.
Yeah, sales of grapes also. These wineries in like France and even in I guess like in America, they would sell these sort of like freeze-dried wine little like cakes, and
That sounds convenient.
well,
Okay.
they would have a warning label that would be like, do not take this home, put it in like water, leave it alone for 30 days. It was like, absolutely do not do this or it will turn into alcohol. But it was like kind of a complex process, so there was like a warning label that was like 30 steps of like how to
the
make
instructions for how to turn it into.
Yeah, but it was like,
wine.
don't do this 100% or it could be really bad. So yeah, that was another loophole. I feel like there was one more that was pretty funny. Oh, religious and doctor. Yeah, you could be a doctor. Like you could prescribe it for medical uses.
Yeah, like marijuana for the last 15 years, depending what state you're in, you can get prescribed for medical uses.
And you could also for religious purposes. Also, some ladies of like the temperance movement, they got sections in the Bible where like Jesus like turns water into wine. They got it redone. They gave it a makeover.
Like a temperance Bible.
Yeah. And there's also there's something about like putting wine like in your stomach, and they were like, no, it's just like if your stomach hurts, you can like rub it on the outside or whatever.
With a wine bottle? Okay.
People were like, you dumb broad.
But there's also a lot of so following in the Raines law, like from 1896, there's still a lot of hypocrisy, and so the wealthy just continue drinking, when we talk about The Great Gatsby. Us, and the wealthy continue drinking mostly because it's a law, but a law can exist. It's not a crime unless you get caught for it.
Well, also they were allowed to
but also Congress people, there was a bar in Congress.
Oh yeah, in the White House,
curtain.
Right? It was like
the
in the
White House. No, it was both in Congress. Congressmen would get drunk and then go vote on the Volstead Act or whatever else. And they didn't close up their bar just because they had passed it. And then the White House would serve cocktails as well. They were drinking all the time.
Which, that's not illegal to serve cocktails if you already had the alcohol from before. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess, you couldn't serve it. They'd be like, go get it yourself.
Yeah. So, everybody was drinking constantly still. It really was just much like you could argue marijuana prohibition was to the law only applied to certain people.
Yeah, so the owners of speakeasies, they would get...
But the law didn't apply.
Oh, to gangsters.
To gangsters.
Can I tell you one this lawyer, this is a crazy thing that this lawyer did. His name was Remus. It's real quick. It kind of has to do with the mafia.
Tell me about this lawyer. What did he do?
His name was Remus.
Was he a mob lawyer?
Well, he realized that a lot of his clients were paying off their debt, like they were in like the bootlegging business, and so they were like paying off their debt like super quick. And he was like, I got to get into this business. So he he opened. So there was a ton of the alcohol that was made, you know, pre-prohibition. Like there was some just like sitting in barrels, aging to perfection. And he was like, I have to get a hold of this. So he opened up a pharmaceutical company, and he bought all of like the liquor that was made before the prohibition that he could get his hands on.
Nice.
For medical purposes. Then he set up a transportation agency to transport it. Then he set up another agency of like sort of police or something, like a vigilantes. And they would stick up the transportation people and sell the alcohol on the black market. So he would turn a profit on it like 3 times.
Nice.
Yeah. Then he also got into like all this trouble. He got caught. His wife cheated on him. Then he ended up murdering her. But in court, people like took pity on him because he was like, my life has been ruined by the prohibition. And he was actually proven not guilty for like murdering his wife and like extortion and like all this stuff. So this is just, it was a sign that like people weren't, you know, people were sort of like, yo, prohibition is bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this guy was originally a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe he was like very good at like helping represent himself too.
Oh yeah, he did have a really crazy, like he did represent himself. He cried, he laughed.
Like, Your Honor, I'm just a simple country gentleman.
This whole court's out of order.
Prohibition bootlegging operation and stick-up boys and reselling it on the black market.
I'm sorry, I'm drunk. I plead insanity and drunkenness.
Maybe he got the whole court drunk.
Maybe he did. Okay, so should we talk about the mafia?
Everybody was a lightweight during Prohibition, so it would just take 1 or 2 drinks.
I don't know though. Like they said that like alcoholism went down, but then like it went up really like a lot. I mean, the number of people that were alcoholics went down, but the ones that were alcoholics, like they went up. If you know what I mean. If it's up, then it's up. Yeah, it like they really.
So
it really went
where
up.
people were getting all the booze from then. And this is all in the context of like Prohibition totally backfired because it created organized crime. What previously had been, I mean,
some could say it backfired. Some could say
it
fired back.
It was cool.
Yeah, we got Scarface out of it. Come on.
Yeah. So it led to the rise of
Al Pacino
of organized crime
and
different
Scorsese.
Different time period, but okay.
The birth of Scorsese.
So who are the most famous gangsters?
Okay, so can I go back just a boop to explain the mafia? Yeah. Because as you know, my last name Iasevoli.
Iasevoli.
Yeah.
You're Sicilian blood.
It's not. I'm from Naples, so yeah. We were like the cuter
Neapolitan ice cream blood.
Yeah, we were the cuter, less mafia people, but still. So in 1881, Giuseppe Esposito fled. He fled. I wrote in these are like very shorthand. He fled Italy, and he went to Louisiana. He went to Nolens, and he was killed by there's a detective named Detective Hennessy who killed him. And people got really mad.
You're saying this is the origin of organized crime in the United States?
Yeah.
Or what?
Of organized crime, period.
It's this guy.
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
No way.
Giuseppe Esposito.
It hasn't been around for like centuries?
It was disorganized. I mean, crime's been around since Australia. No. But it wasn't organized until...
Okay. So Giuseppe gets killed, though.
He gets killed.
All right.
Okay, but then his family, and when I say family, I mean...
The La Famiglia.
His family.
Okay.
They were pissed. They came for revenge. Mm-hmm. And and this is where the word mob comes from, like the synonym for mafia. They mobbed the courthouse, and yeah, and then they like murdered Hennessy, like the detective.
When you're surrounded by Italians at your New Orleans courthouse.
Okay. Yeah, they also mobbed the courthouse, and they were like, "You better not convict any of us." So, and they were like, they all high-fived, and they were like, that was pretty cool. Maybe we should, like, stay organized like this and get more stuff done. So the original, like, thing that the mob did, they got involved in extortion, and there was, it was called the Black Hand, which is the original, like, what's the email from, like, the Nubian prince or whatever that's like, is it Ethiopia? You know, like, the email that, like, the scam that
it's
gets...
Nigerian.
Nigerian. This is, like, the original Nigerian prince. Because they would just, like, write a note, and they would be like, if you don't give us, like, this money, and they would put a hand with, like, basically, like, a bullet, like a black, you know, like it would be like a black like hole in the hand, and it would be like a sign of like creepy, spooky, and people would be like, I better leave the money. So that was the original thing that the mafia did.
So just extortion.
Yeah, but I love it. Like that was like their thing, and it happened like everywhere, and people were like, "Yo, you've been getting these emails, these Black Hand emails."
Well, because probably people didn't pay, they would go shoot them in the hand. Apparently, that's what.
No one ever found out. They all paid, you know.
These are the guys who mobbed the courthouse. You don't want to mess with them.
No.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So also, a lot of gangs had these gangs. They had political ties to Tammany Hall, which was the Democratic hall that helped immigrants like gain power. They were kind of like the UN.
Well, they were a political machine. So they were like the Democratic Socialists, but way more corrupt.
I mean, Democratic Socialists pretty corrupt, if you ask me. It's corrupt lesbian hipsters.
Yeah, but it really was a political movement in the sheer sense of like, as everybody should realize that like politics is controlling the levers of power, and that was about that, and it was like organizing people to vote, but they were like also super corrupt. So it wasn't just trying to like drive people to the polls. It was like, you know, kidnapping people to make them vote multiple
they think
times.
that's how Edgar Allan Poe died. Actually,
I remember from our Poets episode, he was kidnapped and made to vote a bunch of times.
They got him super drunk
by a political machine,
and then they like punched him in the. They punched his arm to like write the to move the lever, and then he died.
Which is also to say that the people who decry the state of our politics now, which do totally fucking suck in America right now, but man, in the like early 1900s, and there was no like neutral like paper of record like arbiter like New York Times or I don't know wherever you get your news from, The Guardian or whatever. There was just every newspaper was a political like newspaper. So you would read the Tammany Hall newspaper, or you would read like whatever,
like in Spider-Man.
They have like.
Don't they like isn't the news off? They're like, stop writing about Spider-Man.
Well, I don't know. I feel that's almost a joke. It's like a parody of the New York Post.
Yeah, but
every paper was the New York Post. We'll put it that way. If the New York Post is one of the last existing tabloid / it's like a pretty right-wing paper owned by Rupert Murdoch. Every paper was that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, all that is to say that Tammany Hall, the political machines, were tied in with the mob. Were tied in with. You've seen The Irishman.
Yeah. So I think some of the names of the gang. I love it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. What are the names?
There was the Barrow Gang, which had Bonnie and Clyde in it. Someone earlier said that we looked like Bonnie and Clyde, which I'm like, yeah,
nice.
So hot. Though they were more the 30s, I think.
So the Barrow Gang traveled. They hit the road.
They traveled. Okay, I just wanted to mention them as names. It's not that interesting.
True.
Okay.
They were more Great Depression.
Yeah, but they originated in this time period. Right? So the Barrow Gang. I love the one that Al Capone and Johnny Torrio. They were called the Chicago Outfit, which I'm like,
It'd be a cool name for a
For a suit, I'm sure there's tons
Huey
of like.
Lewis in the news. There probably should have been a band around then called the Chicago Outfit in the 80s.
I'm sure there's like, what is it? What's the name of the suit place in New York? That's like Klein. I don't know.
There's a bunch of suits.
Well, I feel like in Chicago they're all called the Chicago
Men's Warehouse.
Yeah, I feel like the Chicago Men's Warehouse is the Chicago Outfit. Get your suits fitted.
By the way, Chicago was like extremely corrupt.
Yes. Oh,
like,
because
way more so than New York.
Because of the topography. Because they had just like done some stuff to it.
Topography is destiny, I suppose.
Yeah. They had done some stuff to it and like
renovations?
Yeah, I don't know. They dug like some trenches or something.
They ran some canals, they dug some trenches. They put in plumbing. They
wanted to make like one area good, and then in order to do that, another area was like sunken. It was like the sunken place.
Yeah.
And
they're like, where are the sewer pipes gonna come out?
That's where they think the word like underground as it pertains to, or like underworld as it pertains to crime comes from, because they would literally call it the underworld because it was like literally under the rest of Chicago. Okay. So there was. Oh yeah. So Tammany Hall. Okay. So in New York City, there were two like main families. There was the family headed by Joe Masseria, and then there was a family headed by Salvatore Maranzano. So Maranzano conspired with Lieutenant Lucky Luciano, who is the lieutenant of the other guy.
Okay. Ooh.
Right? And so they kill him, right? They kill the other guy. And then Salvatore decides to set up I love these words are like so gangster. The commission. He's like, I'm gonna set up the commission, which is basically
these are cool names. I like that they appropriated these just like kind of boring, like government pseudo government style names.
It's called the commission, right? So
that's my mom.
Yeah, so they set up the commission, which is a network of gang members from around the country, and the main. These like names are they're so Italian. They're so great. There was the main families that they united were the Bananos, the Colombos, the Gambinos, the Genovese, and the Lucchesi.
And these each ran like a neighborhood of New York.
No, these were all around the country. So that was so awesome about Salvatore, is that he like. Yeah, I don't even know how he did it. Like, because how did you like communicate with? I don't know. He called them, whatever. Like,
the 1920s,
yeah.
The 1920s, he telegraphs them.
So he set up. He
calls
set up
him the phone, and he takes train.
And
trips.
these are people that would have, or groups that would have been like really against each other and like killing each other, but he kind of united them for the greater bad. And then. Luciano then murders Salvatore and becomes the ruler of the commission and also the ruler of the Cosa Nostra, which is our thing.
Yeah, that's a cool name for.
It's a thing, you know. And I do know that the Gambinos and the Genovese, we actually saw their houses this Christmas in Bensonhurst. So a lot of the.
They've reinvested their money into Christmas lights.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's as you have great stories about Bensonhurst, where your grandma lives.
Yeah. So I know the Genovese crime family, they really kept Brooklyn like running, and Bensonhurst running. Someone stole these like jewels from a church, like from the Mary or something. They stole them, and I know that the Genovese like got them back for the church. Like they're very like community based.
Yeah, who knows? This could have been a Sopranos episode. Yeah, like what they had to do to get them back.
Forgot to say, like, the reason why a lot of these gangs were Italian is because a lot of Italians were leaving Mussolini, My grandfather was one of those people. He left Mussolini, Italy, and they had a family and they had work where they could make a lot of money. And these crime families were employing like, you know, truck driver or I don't know, train drivers and all these different people to help with the bootlegging business once Prohibition kicked off. They weren't just doing their like extortion thing. And then people want to talk about Al Capone, probably, right? Lucky Luciano, maybe, is in a Jay-Z song where he's like, Lucky Luciano. That's what they call it. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's an irony or what. It's bizarre almost, like how, like, right, Jay-Z, his whole, like, he's Rockefeller or whatever. Like, he named his whole, like, company after, like, right, an oil magnate from, like, the early 1900s.
Yeah.
But all these, like, 90s and, like, 2000s rappers took, like, names of, like, gangsters from the 1920s. It's bizarre, and they're all just like the original guy was just a mean Italian guy for the most part.
But yeah, it's in his it's in one of his songs, and he's like, that's what they call me, paisano, which means friend. He's like Lucky Luciano, yeah. Okay, so Al Capone, he's born in Brooklyn, and he was expelled from school in 6th grade for clocking his dumb broad teacher in the face. And then he decided to go to Chicago, and he worked for Johnny Torrio, and then Torrio got shot a couple of times in 1925, and he was like, all right, I'm out.
Torrio's great. Yeah, Torrio's like, he's not an old man. He's in his like 40s or whatever, and he's like, yeah, people have tried to kill me several times, and I barely got away, and I am rich, I am retiring.
Yeah.
And Al Capone's like, nice, I'm taking over the gang.
I'll take it over. And I did learn why he only got caught on tax evasion, basically.
I did too.
But
to be clear, because Al Capone ordered the St. Valentine's Day massacre.
What was that?
So that was so Al Capone had a long-standing rivalry with there were two Chicago like main gangs. Right?
There was the Outfit,
which was
and
Al Capone. What was the other one called?
The trench coats.
It was like South and North Chicago. So whatever the North Side boys, we'll say.
The boys and the men.
And I forget the name of his rival. It started with an L. Al Capone and that guy were just trying to kill each other for like throughout the 20s. And that guy like ordered a hit on Al Capone, but and meanwhile like both mobs are like, Chicago politics is super corrupt.
The Moran gang.
Yeah, the Moran gang. So Al Capone, by the way, the reason he's not prosecuted is he keeps killing all these people is Al Capone backed the Republican mayor of New York when that guy declared his candidacy. He was kind of like, he was against Prohibition and made it clear that he would try to like repeal Prohibition locally within Chicago.
Yeah.
And so Al Capone donated a bunch of money to him, like several $1,000s, which is, millions of dollars in today's money, and got very close with that guy, and then helped drive, make sure that, the Italian turnout was good and everything else. That guy won the mayorship, and that guy basically was not going to prosecute Al Capone. And a lot of the cops at the time were also, working with or knew about the bootleggers. So the whole Chicago system is corrupt. So Al Capone's getting away with murder, literally. So,
but I feel like he was just every time they're like, so you've killed a bunch of people, and he's like, no, I wouldn't call it killing them. I mean, come on. I mean, if we're,
So Al Capone's trying to go to war with this other gangster. The other gangster orders a hit on Al Capone, and Al Capone's guys get tipped off about it, and police raid the other gangster's hideout and arrest him for a bunch of having all these guns.
Oh, George Bugs Moran. That was the
yeah.
That was, I think, the one that he was against.
Yeah, I think it was Moran. So anyway, so Moran doesn't get caught, but the hitman gets caught. And so Al Capone in retaliation then finds the warehouse where Moran's importing a bunch of his booze, and he has his guys they monitor the warehouse. There's a bunch of movies about this. It's a great scene.
Did they use how do they monitor it? Like,
they just parked across the street. But they dressed as cops. They dressed as police officers like it was a raid. So they like broke in and they're like, it's a Chicago PD, like everybody up against the wall. They took their IDs and like, or whatever. And they're like, this is bootlegging. And those guys were used to like, cops would do this kind of for show, but not seize anything. So Capone's guys do this dressed as police officers, and they get everyone against the wall and then pull out Tommy guns and just like murder everybody. And this is at a time in America. America hasn't always had constant mass shootings and gun violence. This is at a time
a lot
when
of
it was
the
very
killings
striking.
were like they were secret, and this was like a very public execution, and people were like
so it's in
gagged.
Yeah, this is on a Tuesday at like noon or whatever. They kill these guys in a warehouse, and it's not even necessarily clear these guys are mob guys so much as warehouse workers. And Moran wasn't there. And so this is like, it hits the papers, it's national news. A bunch of papers declare that Al Capone is public enemy number one. He never gets...
Public enemy, another.
Yeah, he never gets charged for like ordering the hit. And so then he like more or less got away with it. And then eventually, it took like another 2 years, but he eventually did get like, Moran got like gunned down.
He got
got. From what was he? Moran was like losing his mind because he was so paranoid at this point.
Yes, I love paranoia.
So I mean, Al Capone's a mean bastard, but Moran was like...
People liked Al Capone though, because like in public, I feel like he was like a lot like that Jimmy Hoffa character. So
after the St. Valentine's Day massacre, Al Capone wanted to rehabilitate his image, so he like gave a bunch of money to an orphanage and like a children's hospital, and like had all these public appearances, and a bunch of people like forgave him. And they're like, well, it's business. And the guys he killed were also like assholes.
He like would play stickball with like the kids, the neighborhood kid, and I guess he would do stuff like. Yeah, like the crime family, like do stuff for the neighborhood, like get the Teamsters to like fix whatever,
It's like The Departed.
That's just like The Departed, or like
film,
if people saw The Irishman, I feel like the Jimmy Hoffa character, where like he loves kids, he's like.
This is pre-unions though. The New Deal hasn't happened, so unions don't have power
like
yet.
that character, like the sentiment of him, like he would just like murder you. But he would also like get your kid an ice cream.
Yeah. So Al Capone, like
also Scarface, because he had a scar on his face, and he didn't like that name because he was self-conscious about it.
Yeah, and then he did have syphilis. He finally got arrested. We'll go into the details of this too. I know it's the Roaring '20s, but it's pretty interesting that he. Chicago was so corrupt after the St. Valentine's Day massacre, and it was clear that like Capone would never be arrested by the Chicago Police Department. He had like helped elect the mayor. Like basically word reached the federal government. And who was it? I think it was Roosevelt at this time. Basically it was like they directed the federal agencies. They're like, Hoover was later, I think, once the Depression hit.
Okay.
We're going to look this up so we don't mess it up in the podcast. But
facts. They're hard.
The idea is the president at the time was basically like, okay, Chicago's out of control. So they directed a bunch of federal agencies. They're like, what can you get Capone on? Anything. And so the FBI was like, oh, like he hasn't, the FBI was like, we've been in tax negotiations with Capone for years because he owes us a shitload of back taxes. And so we have all his financial records. Yeah. And so Capone had was trying to pay off the taxes he owed. And basically the IRS with the help of the FBI stepped in and they were like, no, we're just going to arrest you for not paying your taxes.
Yeah. Well, he went to jail, but he didn't serve his full sentence. But when he came back from jail, he was he had his syphilis got real bad and got to his brain. Yeah. Yeah. He liked to wear silk underwear. That's cool.
But this also is where the the G-men, the FBI guys, right, including Elliot, the famous Elliot Ness or whatever, were dubbed, this is all like true and is in the movie, the Untouchables. They were dubbed the Untouchables because they were federal agents, so they wouldn't be corrupted like all the Chicago police officers were.
The G-men.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, it's men.
Okay, so that's a quick brush on the gangsters, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, but they would, they helped with the transportation of alcohol.
But we should, to be clear, the 20s wasn't just a time of people secretly drinking alcohol in speakeasies.
I think everyone knew that everyone was drinking alcohol. I don't think it was like very secret.
It wasn't that big a deal, I suppose, right? It wasn't like everyday life was constantly sneaking around because there are flappers and people roller skating and cramming into phone booths.
Okay, roller skating.
Yeah.
Were roller skates around?
Yes, they were. And they were very popular.
Do you know NASCAR got invented because of the Prohibition?
No. Mm-hmm. Because they had to drive really fast?
Yes, and then people, they were like, so like as a cover, they were like, oh, we're just like racing our cars. That's why we have this like crazy car. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like, we should do competitive bootlegging.
Oh, no, there was like a cover. Yeah, but it almost was. They were like, people would just, they needed these really fast cars, which then was like 15 miles an hour. And they would like, you know, yeah. Yeah, they would like soup them out and stuff like that. They have Exhibit come and put like a bubble machine in the back of the, you know.
Nice.
The car.
Yeah, and drunk driving wasn't a thing then. It was just called driving. So it's like, yeah.
Oh, I was like
the product while you're
The Great Gatsby. I was
around.
like, wait, there's in The Great Gatsby they have like like that dude has like a George Bush like style of like car crash in it, like when they're making fun of like how raucous the party is. I forget which guy it is. He literally like takes the car out, crashes it, and then like
like George Bush on the Segway.
No, George Bush had a DWI in like the fucking
okay.
in like the 70s when it was like impossible to get like you literally had to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
W did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like some famous video of, I forget if it was senior, it was probably junior, on a Segway who was just like face planted.
No, that's senior. That's senior. No, or that. I mean, but yeah, Great Gatsby, right? Because literature is like popping off too. Langston Hughes is like being awesome with like his poetry.
So we should talk about, quick aside, on the Harlem Renaissance, which also happened in the 20s.
Yeah, so you talked about the Great Migration. And then Harlem was supposed to be like a white people neighborhood, but it wasn't because no one wanted to go like live that far away. So all these African Americans who were like coming to New York and all these big cities, they were like, we'll live there, like, and because like the landlords were like, yeah, it's not going to be very expensive.
A lot of them also did. Yes, they came north because sharecropping sucked. But also,
we talked about how their people.
A lot of them were also brought north as strike breakers.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So lots of people, all the soldiers come back from World War One, and in part because they just fought for their country, are like not as docile working in a factory or whatever. They like union organizing starts, like anarchists and communists and stuff were like. Those ideas were like alive and well, in the 20s.
Charlie Chaplin, OG communist.
So, strikes start happening, and like not like widespread, but like it was a thing. And so, like one way you could break a strike was import a bunch of laborers from the South.
People were like, "Dude, we keep catching fire. Everything's catching fire. Like, can we not? Can you give us like a Band-Aid if we catch fire?" And they're like, "You're fired."
Yeah. So this is still before Social Security passes or the New Deal or any of the other reforms that come around in the 30s, but at the time laborers were organizing.
But yeah, then
the outcome of that is that you have suddenly this big like African American neighborhood in like North Manhattan.
Also, there were like Ma Rainey. She was in she was in traveling like vaudeville and minstrel shows, but then she heard a jazz singer and she was like, this is my jam. I like it a lot. And so she started traveling and like she became a very like famous jazz musician. And because before there were like racist saloons, right? But now there's like speakeasies where everyone's just sort of like in their own, everybody's like an outcast of society, so everybody's friends. And so a lot of these like African American singers and like artists, they're like, yeah, we'll come, like we'll, you know,
yeah, and
we'll like pay you, and you know, we want to see you perform, we want to hear you like sing. And
particularly the Harlem Renaissance had a couple like wealthy patrons.
Oh yeah,
some of whom who were white.
Problematic. There were some Karen-esque patrons. They were like, we're gonna give you lots of money, but you have to do exactly what we say, exactly how we say.
Do you have the name?
Oh no, because we don't give a fuck about their names.
Okay.
Don't say yeah, they're the worst. We're not gonna acknowledge the stupid white people who sucked. But like Marini, Bessie, it was the patron of Bessie Smith.
We should talk about Madam C.J. Walker, who's
the hair lady.
Madam C.J. Walker, the first Black American millionaire.
Yeah.
So yes, she developed hair products,
which are still like amazing, and they also have the first like beauty school that's like it's like Black woman owned, like female owned, and like all your teachers will be like people of color, and they teach you how to do like black hair, which is in the movie Good Hair,
and so
which is actually a really good movie.
So she was got very wealthy, moved back to New York. I think got like very wealthy out in Denver is where her company started, but then moved to New York, had a mansion in Harlem, and her daughter Alelia was like a patron of a lot of the like Harlem Renaissance artists.
Yeah, she had a lot of orgies in her house too. And
yes, there may have been some kinky times as well.
Yeah.
But this is like a lot of the Harlem Renaissance artists at this time met each other and were going to these parties. So that includes Langston Hughes, the busboy poet. Yeah, who would leave poems for like good established poets and on their plate, and then they were like, "Yo," he's working as a busboy in France. And then they were like, "Don't do that anymore. We're gonna like, you're gonna blow up." Yeah, branding. That's a key word. And then Zora Neale Hurston, who was originally from the South, but moved north, and then like was a key because she was a 6 foot tall woman. And super funny, apparently, like key figure in the Harlem Renaissance. Yeah, she's like Grace Jones 1. Grace Jones 1. Yeah, not a fashion model though. She also was like an anthropologist and wrote a bunch of scholarly. Oh yeah, she would. Well as writing fiction. That's right. It was her patron that was like a dumb bitch. Yes. Yeah. Her patron tried to keep her from writing fiction and told her to only publish anthropological stuff. And her anthropological stuff was like against phrenology, because there was this like phrenology thing that was like phrenology. Phrenology? Yeah. Phrenology? Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. So she would go and measure people's heads on the street to like disprove phrenology. Yeah. Yeah, which is awesome. And then she'd tell their fortune a little bit too. She'd be like. And I think she was also the only Black woman to get a master's degree from Columbia. Maybe the first. I forget if she was the first, or certainly the only. What do you mean the only? Sorry, in her year. Okay, I was like, what? Okay, I'm like, excuse me. I was like, I have a question. I don't know if she was the first or just the only in her year. It's this factoid I read. But so the speakeasies are going on. It was crazy. Gatsby parties out on Long Island. Wait, so can I just say that Marini, this is like so dope. As a performer, I'm like, yes, queen.
she had a prop Victrola that she would like come out of because she loved like a good entrance. Like it's all about the workroom entrance. Like it's all about let's get sickening. So she would come out of this giant like Victrola. Like they'd be like, we have to put her instrument like on the stage, and like she would be like, surprise, it's me. And she would like come out. Yeah. And she also had a necklace.
What do you mean come out of a giant Victrola?
It was fake. It was like a fake. It was like a giant. Okay, you know, like the giant champagne glasses for like the burlesque.
This is like a giant phonograph.
Yes.
With a horn, and she like would climb out of.
She would like the birthday cakes that are like, it's happy birthday. She's like, it's me.
That's wild.
That's how she would like open her shows. And also she had this necklace that was made of, she got a bunch of $20 gold coins and she made this necklace out of it. And so, yeah, she got known as like, I think like the gold coin queen or something like that. So she had a lot of swag, and she met Bessie Smith actually in 1913, and people think that she like they both were like openly queer, and people think she was like courting her a little bit, and they kind of went their own ways because her voice was more, she would wail a lot.
She was a whaler.
She was a whaler, and Bessie Smith was more of a crooner.
Okay.
So they had different like visions.
Was Ma Rainey she bought her own rail car?
Yes.
With her money. She bought a 72-foot long rail car so that she could travel around the country.
Oh, she also had gold teeth too. She bought like her, which is like crazy. Like,
you think fronts are cool?
Yeah. She had just like all like just 100% fronts and backs and tops and bottoms. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the equivalent of a private plane at the time, basically, if you had your own private rail car.
Yeah, so that was the Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, out on Long Island, or wherever else, there's like millionaires throwing parties also.
East Egg and West Egg.
Yeah, which is, what are those stand-ins for?
Northampton and Southampton? I
think so. That sounds about right, yeah. Yeah, so you want to talk about The Great Gatsby a little bit?
Yeah. It's the most misunderstood, greatest American novel of its time.
Sure.
Do you know why it got to be the greatest American novel of our time?
No, I don't.
Because it's not very long.
That's it.
I'm dead serious.
Because you're like, Moby Dick is
no
like 50% whale
okay,
facts.
I'm gonna gag you right now. Are you ready? Are you ready to get gagged?
Great Gatsby's about 200 pages, 250.
Yes. So it was a very slim boy, and they gave a copy to everyone in World War II because it could fit in the soldier's pocket. And that is actually why it
really
blew up. That if it weren't for like how thin and small it was, it wouldn't have blown up. People did not like it. In fact, like Fitzgerald, he went to go like, he's like, oh, can I, like, I don't know, he took his friend to like a Barnes and Noble, and he's like, let's go look at my novel. And like, they were like, sorry, we like don't like carry it anymore. So that answers, remember like one of,
because they could have, like, Hemingway had short novels, but they're not going to include me.
They're sad though. They don't make America look very good.
They're anti-war. His novels are pretty they're anti-war.
That's
pro-alcoholism, so they weren't going to fly in the 20s, I suppose.
Yeah, so they gave a copy that was, like, in your pack. Like, you'd have, like, some dry-ass crackers.
That's so funny.
Whatever, and then you'd have The Great Gatsby.
And you're like, what the fuck is this sad rich boy?
But I feel like everyone...
This, like, flapper.
I feel like everyone was jerking off to Daisy, and they were like, yo, did you read that like 2 pages about that broad Daisy? And they're like, I'm not up there yet. You gotta come on.
Yeah, and her abusive husband. It's really cool.
How hot.
Tom, he's such an asshole.
Yeah. Tom. God, Tom, you're the worst.
But we were gonna say the parties, the extravagant parties, and that the flappers are like being driven in and.
Okay, so do you know what you keep saying flapper and like I don't think you. Do you want to know what a flapper is?
I thought it was a 20s party girl.
I mean, they get like they're like, oh, the flappers. But like the flapper it's a British word, and it comes from like a very naive, like, young ass girl because it's like a bird like awkwardly flapping its wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how they danced.
It's just because they're like really awkward and because like I guess like the Brits were like ew because they weren't sophisticated. They didn't want the corsets. They actually like.
I thought they were the equivalent of like influencers of their time, and that they were like the scene kids of their time. Is what flappers were.
I guess
they were like when everyone got called a hipster in the 2010s.
Right. Yeah, because there was a flapper who was like an old, and she's like, actually, I'm not a flapper. I'm like, yeah,
the
like
first sign of it. Yeah.
She's like, I think flappers are gross and bad, and like
the
meanwhile,
identifying sign of a hipster.
Exactly. Yeah, is that they talk about it and that they don't want to be one,
and that they aren't one. Yeah, while wearing all the same clothing. And identifying
so they cut their hair off because like it was less work. In the bob, the style called a bob. Because like think about like Victorian beauty, right? So they had the corsets and like the hip pads and all the shapewear, and they were like padded and snatched and cinched, right? And so the flapper was like, I'm gonna wear a very boxy outfit.
The opposite.
Michelle Visage would not be happy.
No.
She'd be like, sis, where's the transformation?
And not only that, but they could vote.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about... So the women's suffrage movement had already happened. Women got the vote in 1920.
I thought it was called the suffrage movement.
Yeah, I never liked that term either. Who came up... Why is that the word for being able to vote?
Yeah. They're like, we're all gonna suffer now.
I mean, you wait in line to vote? It sucks.
Well, this is actually why, that whatever his Wheeler, he had to like take over the prohibition movement because the women were like, we're trying to vote. Like, just.
The women were too busy voting.
Yeah, they were like, okay, like the hatchet lady was like, meh. She's like, I'd rather vote than like, hatchet anymore.
Oh, I thought she was like, I don't believe in the democratic process.
Oh, probably. I don't know.
Hatcheting everything.
Yeah,
but,
she probably like hatcheted more.
But probably also a big inspiration for the flapper styles is the feeling of liberation with both like having
the
work
shorter,
and being able to vote.
Yeah, so like the shorter dresses. Here's my theory is that like they were like, we want to make our own clothes and we don't have that much time. So like they're like, we just like are gonna wear a bag.
It's quick drag.
It's very quick drag. And they're like, we'll wear like a long necklace to elongate.
The original fast fashion.
Yeah, they're like H&M.
Very.
So I'm throwing
Yeah, it's very shapeless like dress.
A shift dress, yeah.
Shift dress and like compared to like the Victorians with the cinched waist and like petticoats and everything.
Yeah, and they actually would like wear bralets, yeah, to like smush their titties down. Yeah. So that was, I don't know. I'm just like, ugh. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like the way it looks. It's not aesthetically pleasing to me. Yeah, I don't like it. I like the fringe a little bit. I like the Art Deco kind of thing, but I'm just like...
You've got your feathered headdress here.
Yeah, I'm trying to be glamorous.
Your pearls.
Well, this is a little bit... I'm kind of more 30s Hollywood glamour.
Oh.
I'm cheating right now. I'm cheating because I'm kind of more movie star, like Hollywood glamour, like Ziegfeld.
Oh, but I thought the 30s was just Great Depression.
The style of like makeup and everything though, and like and fashion was,
yes,
it was a bit cuter because as you know, people love to escape to the cinema, so Hollywood was popping off,
went super glamour.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really liked the dresses and like there was just like a waist. I was like, can we have a waist?
Can we have a waist?
Can we have a waist,
honey?
Please? I just kind of liked that better.
Okay, so you want to do our quiz real quick on the slang?
Oh, can I talk about the makeup a little bit?
Yes.
A little bit? Okay. So a lot of makeup actually came from, like, Egypt, right? Like, yes.
Oh, Egypt, because Egyptmania, and because the French had just discovered King Tut's tomb.
Yeah.
As we talked about last week.
So I'm not even like doing it justice. There was a very dark like eye shadow, and it's literally like the opposite, because now there's like the fox eye where like okay, so now you shave your eyebrows off and you draw them up to like give your whole face like a lift. Back now in the 1920s, where we've time traveled to, you'd also shave your eyebrows out and you draw your eyebrows lower and like slope down, like literally slope down, so you had a very woeful look. Like everybody's look was like
and a huge forehead.
Well, you could have bangs, you know.
Oh, they all had bangs.
Yeah,
okay.
Huge forehead, and you'd have very like pouty. You'd have very like just like boop, like the Cupid's bow lip. You'd accentuate your Cupid's bow, which now, because everyone has lip filler, you color in, you connect the two Cupid's bow, so you don't even have one, because that's like the look of lip filler. So it's like literally everything that we do today, it's like the opposite. The eye was like very round. There was mascara for the first time, which was like a brush with coal. You'd get like a brick of coal. You'd be like, okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Smoky.
The smoky eye. So we're going to talk about the slang. I told you that cocktail was invented. Also, speakeasies were called paper tigers or blind foxes, and not paper tigers, blind tigers or blind foxes, which is, there's so many bars that are named that.
Yeah, there's one over on like 3rd Avenue, I think, is a blind fox.
Yeah, and then also seeing a man about a horse would be like, you'd be like, I'm gonna go get a drink.
Or about a dog.
Yeah.
Seeing a man about a dog is to go get a drink of whiskey.
Oh.
Do you want me? I'll give you some more slang terms, right?
And bootleggers, because you'd hide alcohol in your boot, and then no one would check there.
Yes, in your boot or leg.
In your bootleg.
Yeah, it's a dumb word when you really break it down, but sure.
Yeah.
Bootleg.
They had a lot of dumb words back then. Okay, you want to give me the quiz of the slangs?
Yeah. All right. So what are gams?
Legs.
Yes. What is to know one's onions?
Ooh, I don't know.
You want to take a guess?
To know one's onions. To know what your tits look like.
It's to know your business or what you're talking about.
Okay.
Like on this podcast, we really know our onions. What's a mall?
A mall?
Yeah.
Like M-A...
M, like a doll, but with an M.
Oh, ecstasy, obviously.
No, but get...
Poppin' mall.
I don't think it had been invented at that point. No, a mall would be, guys in malls. It's a gangsters girl.
Oh,
so you
cool.
Don't hit on a mall. That's trouble.
Don't hit him.
Not a doll. She's mall.
She's a mall.
Because she's like a mall.
She's a mall.
She's
okay.
Doll. She's mob doll.
A mall.
Yeah.
Oh my God. She's like what's her name? The soprano.
Oh yeah, like
Carmela.
Meadow.
Oh,
Carmela.
Meadow. Yeah. Well, Meadow never wanted to date gangsters because she She was like, Dad, stop shooting my boyfriends.
I like this one. It's now you're on the trolley.
It was that now you're on the trolley.
I mean, just from the way I said it, you can.
Oh, when you're like hunting down crime.
No, it's just like you got it.
Yeah, and you're on
like
the trail of something.
You got the right scent. Now you're on the trolley. Now you're with me. What's a Mrs. Grundy?
Mrs. Grundy. Oh, it's someone who has fupa.
It's just like an uptight old lady.
Okay,
like
someone who has.
Mrs.
Oh,
Grundy
I got
be
it.
Your landlady.
Would be like that lady, Carrie Nation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Carrie Nation was a real Mrs. Grundy.
Because isn't a grundle like a male fupa?
I think so.
That's where I got that from.
What's a Sheba?
A Sheba? Weed. A joint.
No, that's someone's girlfriend.
Another? There's so many things.
What's a chic?
A chic? that band, that disco.
No, it's a boyfriend.
Oh.
A she was a girlfriend. A chic is.
Oh, and a chic. Oh, is that like the original pronouns?
You were saying there are a lot of these valid boyfriends and girlfriends. What is it? But me.
But me?
But me.
Well,
But me, buddy.
Why don't you come around here and butt me in the butt sometime?
It means give me a cigarette.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Because, you know.
Oh, because you would light it with your butt, right? Because you light.
Maybe, or it was just like give me a fag. Give me a butt. Fags are the name for cigarettes. In the UK, I'm not using a slur, to be clear. A lot of these are still around. Like Sugar Daddy is still around.
Oh, it means the literal thing?
Yeah.
Because Candy had a really big, like, because people at first tried to cure their alcoholism by eating candy.
Eating candy?
Like men, they were like Don Draper with a lollipop. He was like, hey.
All right.
I know.
Do you know where Tin Pan Alley was?
It was somewhere?
It was in New York City, between 48th and 52nd Street. So kind of Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, why was it called Tin Pan Alley?
Because I guess a lot of the bands they were playing at the time.
They sounded like shit.
Like a tin pan. But yeah, that's where all the where probably Ma Rainey recorded.
Oh, she sounded great. Okay.
And she sounded great. But that's
they don't have a lot of recordings of her because her company they had her sign a thing and they took off. They one of those shitty things. That's why we don't have that many recordings.
Damn.
Of her. Oh, I have some slang.
I'll give you one more.
Okay.
What is Zozzled?
Gagatrandra.
It is drunk.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Okay.
And then all the other ones.
Wait, okay, I have more.
The bee's knees, applesauce, horse
alcohol.
feathers.
Okay.
Applesauce is just darn.
Ooh. What is daylight? This is a good one. I want to start using this one.
Daylight is a slang term.
Yeah.
Is it a verb or a noun? So to daylight. She's really daylighting.
How to fill him with daylight?
Happiness and joy.
It's to shoot someone. How gangster is that? Yo, I'm gonna take Tommy Two Shoes and I'm gonna fill him with daylight, if you know what I mean.
Oh, nice. That's great.
I think that's what you have to say after every. You have to go, if you know what I mean.
The holy bartender joke in Dogma.
Yes. What is? I don't even know what. Oh, what's a flatty?
A flat. I mean, I'm guessing it's not a flat tire. Is it a flat foot, like a police detective?
Yes, very good.
Nice. Ding, ding, ding.
Very good. Very good.
A flat foot, a copper, you see.
What's a gooseberry lay?
A gooseberry lay.
Yeah, it's a type of crime. It's a type of small crime.
Is it a mugging?
No, it's even smaller than that. Well, it's kind of mugging. You're taking something from someone, but they've already left it outside.
You're stealing someone's washing?
Yeah, their clothes.
Really?
Yeah, from a clothesline.
Oh, back in the days where people had clotheslines out that you could get to.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, this makes me so nostalgic. My grandma.
Are you remembering the washing hanging across the street and stuff?
My grandma had a clothesline, and that's how she saved her money because she didn't she saved her money because she washed her own clothes, and she also didn't dry. She put them on the clothesline to dry. So sweet.
Did anybody ever gooseberry lay?
No, because she hung it out of her second story. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all the old timey photos of New York City, down the Lower East Side or Chinatown or wherever, Little Italy, where it's just clotheslines going across the street, and you and your neighbor across the street would be yeah, we got a pulley system here. We just put our clothes out, hanging out in the middle of the street.
Let me see. What is oyster fruit? I'm wearing some right now.
That's a pearl.
Yeah, that's almost like the Cockney like rhyming slang kind of like it's
A little bit.
it's not rhyming, but it's the same kind of.
Check out the gams on that dame. She's got some real oyster fruit.
Oyster fruit.
She might be a mall.
I'm trying to look for. We have so many of these things.
Yeah, right. A lot of the slang isn't like you know it. You're like, oh, we use that word still. Like we still use like.
We still use so many of these. So many of these things.
Yeah.
What's
2 bits or like.
what's
you know,
yard?
Yard.
Yeah.
And like use it in a sentence.
I got a ton of yards in my wallet.
Money, bills.
Specifically, Frank Sinatra used to put yards in his
Is
little
a yard
tiny.
100?
Yeah, it's $100 bill. Cause I guess like 100 yards. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
What's last one. What's a yeg?
Oh man. I actually know this too.
It's a diss. It's a diss.
It's a diss. You yagging?
No, I mean, it's an insult. It's an
Oh,
insulting.
to yag someone.
No. I'm
them
giving
a
you a
yag.
hint. I'm giving you a
Call
hint.
someone a yag.
It would be insulting to them if they were a criminal. Or if they were a detective, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, I don't. This would be like bad at shooting.
It's a safecracker who can only crack cheap ass and easy safes.
That's a really specific
It's
word.
very specific,
to have
right?
Slang for.
Yeah.
Surprise.
And it's funny because it's like you can crack a safe. You're just a yeg. I guess there was a ton of safe cracking happening.
You know, there's all these. Yeah, these yags. You're like. Yeah, I guess it's a term specific to the safe cracking industry.
Yeah.
They have
So I
a
guess-
term for the bad ones.
2 things. Right. So we should be like The Great Gatsby, Wyatt, right?
What?
The parties and whatnot. Why it's misunderstood.
Oh, why is the Great Gatsby misunderstood? Because the Great Gatsby is not a glamorous character, and everybody thinks.
Wait, The Great Gatsby isn't a character.
Well, Jay Gatsby.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm saying, known as the Great Gatsby.
Sure.
But Jay Gatsby, the person in the novel, is not. I think everybody just reads this description of the first party because it happens in the first 10 to 15 pages, and they just remember that. And it is this magnificent party, but a key point in the novel is that Gatsby is not at the party.
Right.
Gatsby has all these people over as an ostentatious display of wealth, but he himself is a very sad man. And his money clearly comes from, like, crime. And he himself isn't even, he's, like, very depressed and is not even enjoying, like, all the money he's making from the crimes he's committing because he's forlorn about this girl who's kind of a ditz. It turns out, and so, like, no one can have anything nice in the end, I suppose, because even the things that the wealthy people want, like going into space, are bullshit. So,
I love. Okay, here's what I love. Here's the
I
parallels,
think that's
though.
kind of a lot of the takeaway from
This is
it.
what I think is funny, that there's people that really care about their parties on East Egg or West Egg or whatever, and they're like, "This is a fucking party. We love to party," and their party's like so bad, and no
their
one wants
parties
to
are
go, and
bad.
it sucks. And
Yeah.
then we have which is like super familiar because it's usually people that are like, "The party."
I do love you. Yeah, you made a point that a key thing Fitzgerald captures is that, like, the best way to throw a great party
Is to be cool about it.
is to not care about it. And it says in the novel, it's the people who ended up at the parties just knew.
Yeah, they just knew.
No one was invited.
just
Everybody
knew to come.
Knew to go.
Yeah.
They knew to come.
And they had French champagne, which would have been just like unheard of expensive to get that into like your own, place or whatever. Also, Gatsbying is now what I call like if you have an Instagram, right, and you're like trying to be thoughty to like get somebody to like be interested in you, but then they like your post, but then you're too shy to like DM them. That's Gatsbying, basically.
Yeah, you're hoping they'll DM you and be like, how do I go to, like, one of these cool
Yeah.
beach days with you, or these cool parties you're throwing.
Jay Gatsby's like, he's fixated on the green light, which is basically like his message indicator.
Oh yeah,
right.
That translates very well.
Yeah.
100 years later, it's his like. His message, his incoming message is notification.
Yeah, and he's like, she hasn't read any of my messages.
He's like, is it Daisy?
Is it Daisy? Is it Daisy? And it's like,
I know.
It's like,
yeah, Jay Gatsby would buy.
It's like, here's your CVS receipt, and he's like, God.
He'd get a bunch of Instagrammable plants and like a cute dog.
Yeah, and he's
just
like,
for her to get her to
look
DM
at this,
him.
and she's like, oh, cute, haha. Yeah.
She just publicly comments, and he's like, no,
DM, slide into my DM.
And then he has to re-comment.
He has to get
her
a
public
Finsta.
message and be like, thanks for commenting, and do like the prayer.
He just sends a bunch of emojis.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the eyes. It's the eyes, the mascot eyes.
That's it. The mascot eyes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he becomes a photographer, and he's like, we should shoot sometime.
She's like, I'm busy. I have a kid.
I'm really busy. My husband's beating me.
Yeah.
And I have a kid.
He already told me once.
We live in the Valley of Ashes?
Yeah.
Which I think is New Jersey? Was that wherever they pass through? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad times.
Yeah, so it's sad.
Yeah.
Jay Gatsby's like the original Byronic hero because doesn't every girl...
Lord Byron.
Oh, yeah.
The original Byronic hero.
True.
Jay Gatsby is a quintessential Byronic.
Yeah. Which people look at him like a playboy, but he's really a Byronic hero. And I think that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that he's really... People look at him as like, he's like, hey, but he's really like...
He's been around the world and had the finest of things, and it just made him sad.
Yeah, because he just wants Daisy. How did he mess up with her originally? Because he was like dating her, but then he like messed up.
Yeah, I don't know, because he was like a soft boy, and she just likes dumb jocks. So like, what are you gonna do?
Oh, true. He didn't play hard to get enough. He was like, okay.
I don't even know about hard to get. He was like, I'm wealthy, but do you want to like look at my books or something? And she was like, yeah, this guy can he I don't know, whatever, like he can kick a field goal from 100 yards or something, whatever, like Tom did. This guy can fix a car. It's awesome.
A car.
Yeah. He's a mechanic.
He parked a car and he fixed the car.
Yeah.
And he crashed the car.
He crashed the car.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's they really just weren't meant for each other. You know, Gatsby needed to find a woman who could appreciate his criminal genius. And that wasn't going to happen.
He needed a Bonnie for his...
Yeah, maybe Daisy was part of the temperance movement.
Probably.
She wanted him to go to church, and he was making all his money throwing these ostentatious parties. So.
But she was like, I'll go.
I'll go, whatever, I don't
She's
care.
like, I just got a new feather thing. Mm-hmm. I just got a new shapeless, ugly-ass dress that I need to show my knees off with.
Nice.
Apparently they wouldn't show their knees off, just their ankles. So the knees, no, too naughty. Too naughty. I think not.
Oh, what is it called to ankle it? What does it mean to ankle?
To ankle?
Yeah.
I don't know. Show your ankles.
It means get out of here.
Oh.
Let's ankle it.
Let's ankle it.
Like we're about to do.
Woo!
I think.
Yeah.
We pretty much covered everything.
Oh, the stock market crashes conveniently in 1929 to end out the decade.
So why the 20s stopped roaring and why it ended?
Well, Prohibition became not anymore.
When did
Prohibition became illegal.
When did it get repealed?
Is that what you call it? Prohibition became illegal.
Outlawed. When did they pass the amendment repealing Prohibition?
Probably near the end.
Because often it is, late October 1929, that's 22, and...
Oh, I think in the 30s, actually, like 33 or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe,
So
I don't know.
I think it took a little longer,
Yeah.
but everybody had kind of stopped enforcing it by the late 20s. Like, everybody was just like, this is
Yeah,
bullshit.
and there was
It's
a
dumb.
cool lady named Pauline Sabin, who really organized women to fight Prohibition. Like, she did a real bang-up job of it. She was awesome.
Women were fighting Prohibition.
Yeah, which is funny because originally
Because
they
they caused it.
Yeah, they were like, we don't like getting beaten and stuff like that. But really, they just wanted to like hang out with their men's a little bit more. And now they were like, now our husbands are dead because the government killed them.
Or they're like, our husbands are fucking around all the time, and it also sucks.
Or they're like, our husbands are gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they were like, we love organizing. Oh my God, Container Store. Yes, we organized to vote. We organized for the prohibition. Now we're going to organize to end it. They loved organizing. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk about, so the Wall Street crash of 1929 is mostly funny because it's like financial shenanigans. So it, like, anybody who's been investing in the stock market for the past year, like meme stocks are like a thing now. Did you follow like
No.
GameStop was like, you know, GameStop.
All my money's in under my mattress, okay?
That's great. Okay. GameStop, I'm going to explain a recent example and then we'll apply it to the 1920s. So GameStop is a recent like mall retailer, buys and sells used video games.
Okay, I know what GameStop
Not a very
is.
cool company. A bunch of short sellers bet against them. They were like, their stock's probably going to go down in the future.
Right.
Reddit, Wall Street Bets, r/Wall Street Bets found out about this. Reddit loves buying and selling used games. And they basically, through the Robinhood trading app, you can buy options now. And options work such that you can effectively, by buying an option, drive the price of a stock higher in a very leveraged way. So this happened in January, February of this year. Wall Street Bets basically coordinated hundreds of thousands of Redditors and drove GameStop stock up like 40x, like through the fucking roof. And the short sellers were a bunch of investment banks, like major hedge funds in New York City. And a couple of them actually went bankrupt because of this. So this was like the common man beat out Wall Street.
Oh, wow.
Was an insane thing that happened in finance this year. So I'm going to take this all back to, this actually very much mirrors what happened in the late 1920s. Is a bunch of people were doing very well, right? Women were in the workforce, bootleggers making money, lots of people have cash now, and they're looking for places to invest it, and there's just becomes a bubble in the stock market. People start speculating on stocks, and as stock prices go up, more people start speculating on stocks and they go up more. So it became like this giant bubble in the stock market. So the average of all the stocks like tripled over like 2 years. And so a bunch of like analysts and like major bankers were like, this is unsustainable. These companies aren't worth what people are like putting into their stocks.
But then like, I feel like the presidents and stuff like that were like, it's sustainable. It will last forever. Don't worry. America's great.
So there were at the time actually there were a lot of like competing views on this. So I forget the name of this major like investment banker in like April of 1929. Oh, it was the Federal Reserve in April of 1929 was like, there's too much speculative activity. It's going to be a major crash, and then like the stocks dropped like 5 to 10%, and then they just continued going back up again. And people were borrowing a lot too. There was a lot of easy like capital. So people were actually like, they would borrow as much money as they could borrow and then put it into stocks.
Ooh,
at the time.
That's
Businesses
scary.
would do that. Right? Yeah, that's a crazy, not smart thing to do.
Wild. Why would you have to?
Yeah, because it's kind of like Bitcoin, isn't it? So people would like take their life savings and go to a bank and be like, here's collateral. Let me get a loan worth 3 times this. And it would happen. And the leverage was crazy, and there weren't very many regulations about this at the time.
Oh, no.
And then like when you put all your money in the stock, it keeps going up. But then like, anyway. So around basically September of 1929, and famously it is September 4th? Yes, September 4th, 1929, known as Black Tuesday.
I thought it was all October because I thought it happened right on Halloween.
So it actually, the whole crash of 1929 took 2 months. And it goes from September 4th through November. And so the stocks like trend down throughout that. And then what really led to the Great Depression is, we'll say the stocks at their peak at like end of August were at 400, was like the Dow Jones Industrial Average. They dropped to about 250 by like the end of October, 200. So they've cut in half. Everybody's pretty fucked. But the problem then is that like for the next 3 years they kept dropping. So by 1932, the average is down to like 40. It's dropped
no.
It's 1/10 of what it was. So if your savings were in the stock market, you're so fucked.
Also, like farmers, they were being like subsidized and whatnot, and then like they weren't anymore. Also, people like were poor, so they couldn't buy stuff. So then like industry suffered.
So a lot of economists have like, I mean, it's been analyzed to death because it's kind of a key like moment in modern like finance and how the whole system is set up. So the economist Irving Fisher, who famously totally fucked up the Great Depression because he had like a newspaper column in like August of 1929. He was like, stocks have reached a permanently high plateau. It's great from here on out. And he was wrong. But after the crash and everything, Irving Fisher basically pointed out, he was like, it was a panic. And the real thing that happened is a lot of people, like, as stocks start dropping, everybody sells, which drives the price down further, and everybody continues selling. There's no buyer. And so a lot of, like, during September, October, JP Morgan, a lot of famous bankers and financiers went, and they would very publicly, they would go to Wall Street with all their bros and publicly, like, put like $1 million in stocks, like, and make a scene, because a very similar crash happened in 1909, and what stopped it was JP Morgan organizing a bunch of like wealthy dudes to go put money into stocks. And they're like, let's go
have sex with these stocks.
And they're like, we'll do it again. We're going to have an orgy with these stocks in public, and everybody's going to see us. They'll get horny, and the market will like turn around. So they did exactly that, but it wasn't enough. And a lot of the fundamentals of like businesses, they had like, they call it like the economy had like overproduced. It had like, you know, overheated.
Oh, also people had to pay taxes again because the prohibition was over.
It wasn't over yet till like 33 though.
Oh, true. Okay. Well, never mind.
But yeah, so it was that coupled with, there was like a lot of contagion between industries, they thought. So there was a whole thing with like the wheat harvest, like.
Oh yeah, there was like the potato. The wheat bug.
America had like a really great like wheat year, and like insane amounts of wheat, and they're like, oh no, wheat prices are gonna be like nothing.
Wheat or weed? Weed.
Winter wheat.
White wheat.
And so the prices all like were looking real bad. Things were looking bad for the wheat industry, and then Australia and Europe all had like shitty wheat harvests, and so the price went back up again, and everybody piled back into like the wheat investing, and then it turned out to just be like an average year overall, and so like everybody lost their money. But all these things piled onto each other, and then there were all these bank runs, and so at the time the Federal Reserve existed, but there wasn't deposit insurance. So if we've all seen the scene from It's a Wonderful Life, people basically were like, oh shit, my bank.
Mary Poppins! Exactly. Mary Poppins. Remember, like, the dad, like, he goes, takes out all the money?
Yeah, so everybody's like, oh no, like,
that was a sad movie.
My bank is heavily invested in wheat or whatever else, or like all these stocks, or whatever. I know that my bank has loaned a shitload of money to people who, like, then put all the money into stocks and they can't pay it back. So everybody went to banks and like demanded their money back, and banks would just run out of money. So it was like hundreds of banks just went bankrupt also and couldn't pay back the deposits.
Just went rupt.
They went rupt. And then when, you know, the bank goes bankrupt, all the depositors are screwed. And so like they can't pay their landlords or anybody else. And you get that, 1929. And then at the time, they also like hadn't really figured out the idea that the government could just go into debt to spend money to kickstart the economy.
Until who's our boy who discovered
That's Keynes.
Hamilton. Hamilton had already happened. They didn't listen to Hamilton, I guess.
Hamilton did support a strong like central like federal
he loved debt.
Treasury.
Like,
Hamilton created the Treasury Department. The Federal Reserve was created in response to the crash of 1909, because they were like, we need somebody to effectively like try to like control the economy in general.
But it didn't do such a good job.
So they were created in 1909, but they were kind of like very limited in the power that they had. And then post 1929, one of the reforms, the Federal Reserve can effectively print money by issuing bonds to the Treasury. It's a whole system, but the idea is they can basically put as much money into the economy as they need. And that's why coronavirus wasn't that bad for the economy. Everything got super fucked up in early like 2020, right? You would expect a massive like economic crash, but there wasn't, right? For the most part.
No, most people were richer than ever.
Some industries were disrupted, but a lot of people got unemployment, like money. There are all these grants that came out.
A lot of people bought stuff on Amazon.
A lot of industries got supported, and stocks, if you were following the stock market like last March, they fell about 30%, hit bottom, and then like today they're now like, 50% higher than they were 2 years ago. And that's all because of like basically the Federal Reserve stepping in and doing a lot of like basically like making money very cheap and loaning it out to various industries and supporting mortgages and a bunch of other stuff. Economists argue about this. This has been the boring section of the podcast.
So like the 1920s and then it's like sad and everyone cries. But people cinch their waist again because they're God-respecting women.
Yeah, we probably won't do a Great Depression episode of the podcast, but
you can watch The Wizard of Oz one if you want something from that era.
Well, and it was a very difficult time. If you thought the coronavirus like post-recession or like 2008 was bad,
it was, dare I say, depressing.
It is incomparable.
It was quite depressing.
The amount of misery,
quite sad,
of like the 1930s.
But Hollywood made its big, like...
Hollywood made it see, if you could afford to see movies.
A lot of people would. Ones. They would, like, they find in, like, times of economic depression that people love, like, porn and movies and, like, escapes. So...
Also in good times.
No, actually, like, not as much.
Oh, okay.
Like, during my mom was, like, so depressing. During the coronavirus, a lot of people invested in, like, themselves and, like, their beauty and skincare regimens. So, like, the skincare industry took, like, a tiny little dip, and now it's, like, crazier than ever. So...
Also home improvement. It drove lumber prices through the roof.
Timber! But, yeah, so... history repeats itself again. Maybe in 2029 we'll have a Great Depression as well, but until then we're just gonna keep partying like it's
we got
it's 1919.
8 years to live it up, so it's good to know.
Yeah.
Keep partying like it's 19. Yeah, like 1922 I think is when the Roaring Twenties kicked off. And they had a great 7 years.
It was hot.
Not that much. Yeah. That's shorter than Bloghouse.
Bloghouse never dies. So yeah, if you want to keep partying like it's 1919, what should you do?
That is true. If you want to kick off the Roaring 2020s, you should join Secret Loft for a bunch of upcoming events. So that includes the weekly Wednesday, 8 p.m. podcast question block, which you're currently watching or listening to. And that includes a bunch of Secret Loft comedy shows, which are every Friday around 8 p.m. Check local listings or secretloftnyc.com.
I like to keep it casual.
For the calendar. Sometimes there's 2 shows in one night. Sometimes it's just one show. It really varies depending on bookings. So check. Make sure if doors are at 8 or 7:30, depending. And then
we have so many parties. Oh my gosh, we have so many. It's like wild.
So what do we have? Friday, August 6th. After the comedy show,
we have like vaporwave awesomeness with Vanov.
Vaporwave party with Vanov, with Cruz and Discato.
Yes, a fellow Italian.
Great Italian Brooklyn DJ. And then the next night after that, the night of August 7th is the disco ball.
Which that week I know that we're going to be talking about the disco history.
Yes. So Secret Loft Studio 54, updated, inspired party. And I think late August too, August 21st.
We got a party, and then we also
be a
might
party.
have something going on.
We're going to have something next Friday.
Yeah.
I'll have to let you know about that.
Yeah, and like give us a review that's really high, that's like 5 stars or above. And we'll shout you out.
Oh yeah, and
Shout out
Anna Chelsea, who did buy a ticket to the disco ball.
And also has given us
that.
many 5-star reviews via her and her friends. She hasn't stacked.
She's a bundler.
Yeah, she's a bundler.
Yeah, she's a pioneer level.
She is. She is.
All right. Well, I guess that wraps up the 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, we covered the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
It's been a
Also, weed. People
decade.
smoked weed apparently.
Throughout the 20s?
In the heart. Yeah, like.
What'd they call it?
What do you think they call it? What's your slang for it? I think they were like it's a cigarette, like
You're
whatever.
like devil's lettuce. That's the most old-timey term I think I know of for marijuana.
The devil's lettuce.
The devil's lettuce. All right. Well, let's end with some electro swing, which is
awesome.
was like 2012's, 2014's version of like throwing back to the 1920s.
And like this new dance. I wish that like dances. Yeah, they just come out on TikTok now, I guess.
Yeah, they spread faster. But you can go learn
should we
something.
pose?
Pose for me. Back camera. Camera 2.
Oh, I have a cigarette. I think it's